All right, let's jump straight into it. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're dissecting a really fascinating financial broadcast dated July 2nd, 2026, that's making some massive claims about global currency movements. We're going to objectively break down the intricate multi-year blueprint this source lays out, specifically focusing on two currencies, the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong. So, here's the big question they pose. Is a massive global wealth shift quietly unfolding literally right under our noses? According to the analysts in this broadcast, a silent monetary countdown for these two currencies has officially entered its most crucial phase. Now, you won't see central banks shouting this from the rooftops. They're keeping things tightly under wraps to avoid crazy market speculation. But if you look closely, an unmistakable pattern of coordinated action is totally taking shape behind the scenes. To demystify all this, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look beyond overnight speculation. Then, we'll dive beneath the economic iceberg, map out the five-step master plan, explore the Vietnamese dong parallel, and finally, wrap it all up with what to watch for. Okay, let's get into it. Section 1, Beyond Overnight Speculation, Moving Past the Internet Rumors. Right out of the gate, the source material draws a hard line in the sand between financial fantasy and economic reality. For almost 2 decades, the internet has been completely flooded with these wild rumors framing this whole thing as some sort of overnight lottery ticket. Chaotic market shocks leading to instant wealth. But the reality they point out, it's a calculated, transparent, and highly deliberate institutional process. This multi-year blueprint is engineered to build undeniable monetary strength. And these central banks, they absolutely refuse to rush it, no matter how much outside pressure there is. Moving to Section 2, Beneath the Economic Iceberg, Foundational Monetary Reforms. The broadcast phrases this perfectly. They say, a potential currency revaluation is merely the visible tip of a massive economic iceberg. I absolutely love that metaphor because it hits the nail on the head. It's exactly what the average observer misses, right? We all naturally stare at the flashing exchange rate on our screens, but the real heavy lifting, the actual economic groundwork, that's happening quietly beneath the surface where nobody's really looking. So what exactly is building out the bottom of that iceberg? What's tearing down the old, outdated legacy structures? Well, according to financial observers, we are seeing sweeping commercial banking overhauls across the board. They're laser-focused on stabilizing domestic purchasing power. Plus, and this is huge, we're seeing an aggressive expansion of national physical gold reserves. That's just a classic central bank move to instill rock-solid confidence in a currency. And finally, there's a highly coordinated push to diversify foreign currency reserves away from their historic reliance on the US dollar. They're genuinely aiming for real monetary sovereignty here. Which brings us to Section 3, the five-step master plan, the methodical institutional process. The analysts lay out a really structured sequential internal process here. Step 1 is internal stability, basically getting a firm grip on inflation and local commerce. Step 2 is banking cleanup. Step 3 is digitization. Step 4 is the physical introduction of smaller denominations. And finally, Step 5 is the gradual rate adjustment. And here's the kicker. The broadcast points out that experts largely consider Steps 1 and 2 to be completely done. Let's actually zoom in on that completed Step 2 for a second. The source highlights how sweeping regulatory audits have shut down thousands, literally thousands, of fraudulent, dormant, or non-compliant bank accounts. Now, you might be wondering, why does that matter so much? Well, cleaning up the institutional books and tackling deep-seated corruption isn't just a good idea, it's a mandatory prerequisite. If you don't build trust and resilience from the inside out, any sudden shift in currency value would just completely collapse the system. And that leads us right into Step 3, digitization. Field reports are showing a nationwide rollout of IBAN, which stands for International Bank Account Number. Now, this isn't optional, it is absolutely non-negotiable. It standardizes accounts to strict international formats. Look at it this way. To function in the 21st century global economy, especially when you're dealing with massive, incredibly lucrative oil exports, you just can't rely on slow, opaque cash transactions anymore. You need advanced digital rails. IBAN enables those flawless, automated cross-border transactions that a highly valued currency desperately needs. So that brings us to the logic behind the final steps. Step 4 is all about printing smaller denomination notes. Think about it. If a currency's purchasing power suddenly shoots up on the global stage, you need smaller notes just for everyday convenience. Otherwise, buying basic groceries creates a massive logistical nightmare. And Step 5, the official exchange rate adjustment, It's not going to be some wild, sudden spike. The plan reportedly calls for the rate to be tested internally first, within major government contracts and national budgets, long before it ever hits global retail platforms. It's a phased approach designed specifically to prevent market panic. Moving on to Section 4, the Vietnamese Dong Parallel, a simultaneous economic playbook. Now, our source points out a truly intriguing trend here. Iraq is not just some anomaly operating in a vacuum. Vietnam is actually running a strikingly similar playbook right now for the Vietnamese Dong. Both of these resource-rich nations are simultaneously accumulating gold reserves, modernizing their digital payments, and actively aligning with international compliance standards. Now, to be completely impartial here, analysts aren't saying there's some secret backroom coordination going on between Baghdad and Hanoi. But come on. The fact that both are executing these exact same structural reforms at the exact same time, that is a massive indicator of a collective push toward financial modernization. So who's helping guide all this? Macroeconomic analyses suggest that global heavyweights, like the International Monetary Fund, are actually instrumental behind the scenes. But of course, you're not going to see flashy public press releases about it. That would just cause wild market swings. Instead, seasoned observers note that they use what you could call coded language hidden in official reports. They'll use terms like comprehensive monetary reform or structural currency alignment. It's this subtle, quiet guidance, proving that these nations are methodically hitting their required checkpoints. Which brings us to our final section, what to watch for, tangible market indicators. So what's the bottom line here? The broadcast strictly advises us to ignore the loud, speculative headlines and instead keep our eyes on real, observable milestones. Here's the actual timeline you should be watching. Phase 1. Keep an eye out for new government contracts that start testing these new internal exchange rates. Phase 2. Watch for the official release of national budgets that actually put the newly adjusted rate into practice. And finally, Phase 3. That seamless integration into major global trading platforms, where the currency finally operates at its true, recalibrated value internationally. Ultimately, this whole narrative has really evolved. It's moved way past internet rumors and into a documented, strategic execution plan, one designed to restore these currencies to their true historical value based on their vast natural wealth and modernized banking systems. But it does leave us with one massive, provocative question to ponder. When this silent countdown finally completes its methodical steps, will this meticulous, multi-year blueprint permanently recalibrate global economic relationships as we know them? It's definitely something to think about.